My arcade travels still bring me to my favorites, the rhythm games and fighting games. But along with those, two other staple genres continue to pop up in current arcades, the driving and light gun games. For the latter, I've spent some time on Gemubaka looking over Elevator Action Invasion and Time Crisis 5, but my recent trip to Round 1 afforded me some time on Sega's Mission Impossible. Sega released this game back in 2019, and its big hook was in its XL Deluxe cabinet. This massive cabinet stationed two setups with 55-inch screens, so players could join up in teams of two to tackle the missions. A more standard size of cabinet is available that drops two of the players, and this was the setup I was able to play at the arcade location. Players can choose between 3 different missions, and each features 3 segments to create 9 stages overall. The scenarios feature armies of humanoid robots, and the action is controlled with mounted dual pistol controllers that players can fire simultaneously in short, powerful bursts, or take more accurate shots with a single pistol to avoid having to reload sooner. Ultimately, Mission Impossible is a sort of marriage between Sega's Confidential Mission and Namco's Time Crisis. It's more prevalent in the 4-player version, but the game is a race to the finish compared to the opposing team, resulting in a time attack approach. Not only does targeting and finishing off enemies as fast as possible work into the race, but there are also occasional mini-games that change up the gameplay. I tried one of the game's 3 missions and overall had a fun time with my experience. The first mission takes place on a train, and you get a variety of scenarios that take place inside the train cabinets and on top of the train. In this mission, the game does a good job of cycling out different types of robots, along with shooting down drones, projectiles, and vehicles. Admittedly, most of the minigames I have seen revolve around tapping on your start button as fast as possible, but others did present themselves, such as firing a special weapon when the 2 crosshairs match up. I think the dual pistol setup is really well done. It feels great in your hands, and you can hold down the triggers for it to automatically fire in bursts to save your hands some stress. The guns reload either when you ease off the triggers momentarily or if you exhaust 16 bullets, and you'll have to go through a short reload animation at that point. I read in an online interview that the pistol setup was chosen because light gun games with gun peripherals with designs such as having cords sticking out of the cabinet take tons of abuse in arcades. The idea is that the setup used in Mission Impossible would result in less wear and tear the arcade operators would have to deal with. I think that's brilliant, and while I can't speak to whether or not these guns actually hold up over time, it's nice there is a developer thought process going into thinking about the arcade operator. All in all, Mission Impossible controlled very well, and I got nice force feedback using the dual pistols. The game also looked and sounded great, so I have no complaints overall about the game's presentation. When I play light gun games in arcades, my main concern is in how cheap the game administers hits to the player. I sort of went over this in my Elevator Action Invasion thoughts, where it seemed impossible for at least one player to deliver damage to the bosses without taking hit. In my first time playing, I thought Mission Impossible was quite fair in the first set of missions, only requiring 2 continues to make it through 3 stages. Harking back to Sega's games such as Virtua Cop, Mission Impossible uses markers to highlight the enemy that is the biggest threat currently on the screen, and this gives you the knowledge you need to try to avoid taking damage. The first full mission ends with a boss fight against the helicopter, and I felt there was plenty of time to hit the weak points needed before it attacked the player. Even when playing solo, the game awards rankings in multiple areas including time, teamwork, and shooting destructibles. These award points, and players are ranked in the amount of time they take to complete the stages, so there is a good amount of feedback to receive based on your performance. However, even when you are playing on a 2-player setup, the game constantly refers to the other team, even though there is no link to offer the extra players. This team is seemingly automated by the CPU, so there is some incentive provided by the game to be quick about things. The problem is, playing solo gave me no real concept of what exactly happens to the team that is left behind, or if there are any gameplay advantages to being in the lead. It seems like a really interesting mechanic, but it's hard to tell if it would just boil down to bragging rights and bonus points, or if there's a genuine perk to besting the other team. But judging from the price and size of the 4-player XL Deluxe cabinet, I'm very doubtful I will ever see one in person. Still, I had fun with my limited time on Sega's Mission Impossible. Even though it looks different and has a modern design, when you are playing the game you can see the classic Sega light gun game designs in place, and as I said, there is an air of confidential mission to it. Given the recent string of light gun games featured on Gemubaka, I don't think I could put it above Time Crisis 5, but it's definitely better than Elevator Action Invasion. As with most light gun games, I get the feeling you'll get more mileage out of playing Mission Impossible with a teammate. I'll keep my fingers crossed on coming across a 4-player cabinet, but if you have any experience playing this in multiplayer, please let me know how that went in the comments.